Hello, and welcome to Seeking Heaven, the Near Death Experience and Other Phenomena. I'm your host, Tamara Calder Richardson, 6-time near death experiencer, evidential medium, afterlife speaker, and Christ channeler. So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, hit the bell, wherever which side your bell's on, hit the bell so you can get all the episode alerts. There's 2 episodes a week. And we have some exciting guests, just like we do today, whether they're near-death experiencers, spiritually transformative experiencers, UFO experts, cryptozoology experts, ancient mysteries, and more. So lots of fun spiritual guests that I have on. And today is no exception. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about our guest today. And by the way, if you haven't considered being a member, be a member. I have some awesome membership perks, including with me, spiritual counseling every month. So what a deal to be a love leader. So check that out. All right. Today, our guest, we've been going back and forth, but this is the perfect timing. And I'm so excited. So today we have Stephen Weber. Now, Stephen wrote the book about his NDE, which is called Between Here and There. Now, he's going to talk about, today is a big debut because he will be talking about not only his near-death experiences, but he's never talked before about his spiritual or spiritually transformative experiences, and also having to cope with and understand, especially with this new perspective that he has on life, the death of his son. So he has a lot that he wants to say, and I'm very excited to have him here, and I'm going to bring him on right now. Welcome to the Seeking Heaven channel.
Hey, Tamara, so good to be here. Thank you so much. I really enjoy speaking with you, and I'm grateful for this opportunity that you're sharing your audience with me. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so excited. And I think it's going to help so many people for them to hear your journey. And you're so much fun already. You're just a ton of fun, and to tell your story that people can maybe learn from. We don't always have to go through everything. We can learn from others. So today it's going to be a little bit different because we were talking beforehand pre-show, and you said, look, I always talk about my near-death experience. And I think a lot of near-death experiencers get caught in that trap where they tell the story over and over, but number one, we're evolving. So we're learning more from the experience, more is coming out, and we're also in tune with spiritual things. So we're gathering more spiritual information. We're growing more spiritually. So today you're going to share a little bit more of yourself than you normally do. And I think that's great. And I'm very supportive of that. And I tell people all the time, we're not just an NDE story. We actually have things happen to us all the time. We actually are evolving. We're connected. So it's not like we're stuck in the past with that NDE. So go ahead and start where you think your spiritual journey began.
Well, thank you so much, Tammy. Well, I've been a biker all my life. I started riding bikes, motorcycles when I was a little kid. I had a paper route. There was an empty field next to my house. So motorcycles have always been a part of my life. But I'm a computer guy. I'm an engineer. And during this time, as I ran my own computer firm, which my brother and we started together. And so I really enjoyed being like an alt personality. I was this big biker with this long hair and muscles and tattoos and Harleys, but I was a computer guy. And, it was kind of cool. I lived in 2 worlds, and I really enjoyed my alt life, beer and hot wings and Harley Davidsons and rock and roll. That was my lifestyle. I loved it. I really did. I wish I could go back there.
I'm curious. Do you still ride a bike?
No.
Does Katherine, your partner, have something to do with that?
No. You know what happened? I was so injured in the accident, and a mild mishap can be very serious now. And after everybody who came and helped me during that time, even if I was stupid for myself, there are other people to consider now. And that's one of the lessons I learned from that experience.
Wow, I got
and
it.
So, but having said that, I have a little e-scooter that's a battery operated. I zip around the block on that.
Too much trouble with that. That is funny.
Because it's always been my life, motorcycles. I mean, it really is. And I love computers, and I loved it. It really was such a big part of my life. And one afternoon, it was like back in 2005. It was 4th of July weekend, and I was driving my Harley Davidson, and I was at a bikers bar. but but
Yeah.
but but when I say bikers bar, it's not like you sit out there and hang out and drink all night. It's not like that. You hook up with people. You hook up with a group of bikers. You go out, you zip around for an hour, then you come back and you hook up with another group. You do that all night, and you check out who has what, and so it's like a meeting place. And so after doing this all night, is that it was like 2 a.m. and I go riding home on the Meadowbrook Parkway. It's a parkway on Long Island that leads to the beaches. It's like a hangout kind of place. And I'm driving down the parkway at 2 a.m. and I'm driving on the side of the road in the left-hand lane. And I'm driving, and all of a sudden, to my left, I see a pickup truck driving next to me going in the same direction. I didn't think too much of it at the time, but then I looked down and I saw there was a medium, a divider between the two of us.
Okay.
And then I realized he was going the wrong way. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's that's scary when you see someone doing that.
Well, I wasn't sure what was seeing because it was late at night and construction was going on and they had all cones out, and this was a pickup truck. Like it was like, was the road closed and he was working? I was just trying to reason. I only had a few seconds and I was like, I don't know. And then as soon as I realized, no, this guy's going the wrong way, I realized the medium disappeared and he was right next to me. And so I realized if he noticed he was going the wrong way, he might just run into me. So I immediately let off the gas and I went into the right lane. And just as that happened, the pickup truck went under a bridge and went head on into a limousine.
Oh my God, you witnessed that.
Killed a little girl, a little 7-year-old girl, and killed a limo driver.
Oh my goodness.
And so at the time is that first off, it was a big crash. Parts went all over the place. And I actually had to duck to get out of the way. And, but people were on the scenes immediately. There's never empty places. So people stopped, people were on the scenes immediately and everything else. And so these things happen all the time. As long as people were there, I kept going. It's just, motorcycles, accidents, you want nothing to be about it. So I didn't think, these things happen. It do. You travel all over the country, hundreds of thousands of miles on motorcycles, And so the next day in the papers, I saw that they were asking for witnesses. And so as I saw that, and I was like, I'm not coming forward because that, they had the guy, the facts were known. It wasn't that there were people there. There had plenty of witnesses, I believed.
Right.
What's the big deal? And I was and I don't mean what's the big deal. I mean that it's I don't.
Why did they need you? They had all those people watching.
They had.
It was obvious.
So I went on with my life. And then about a year later, I opened up the newspaper and I saw there was this trial going on, that they were charging the gentleman with vehicular homicide, second-degree murder, because they said he was drunk at the time. And that there was this big trial going on. There was all this pre-trial stuff, and because it was a whole thing about him being tried for murder in this case. It was a national case. Wow. And so I said, I talked to my children, and it was a real big deal, but I came forward. Okay. And wow, it was the most surreal experience of my life, because I was on that stand for 2 days. And really? I was on the stand for 2 days, and it was a crazy experience, because that the attorney didn't have anything. He was just using little tricks to try to trip people up on his words. And I did business with my brother in Brooklyn for 20 years. I'm telling you.
You're sharp cookie. Well, nothing can get past you.
As far as, let's just say, in some ways, I can see certain things.
Yeah, and, you go through but in so many ways,
Tammy, is that I say the case was really in a bad way at the time. They had thrown out the blood evidence. It was really and I had mixed feelings about it because that,
Imagine.
excuse me?
I imagine you did because a question I have real quick. Did you think he was drunk when you saw that whole thing or did you know?
He just looked like a guy driving down the road.
Got it.
They did. There was nothing. It just looked like, I don't know. He just looked, and my bike was so loud. He didn't even react to me. I mean, people would give me the finger as I drove by. My bike was so loud. My neighbors had a meeting and elected representatives to talk to me about it. And he didn't faze him at all. He just kept on driving.
He could have had something then, yeah, maybe.
Well, it was just so surreal. I'll never forget that. But what happened is that after I was on that stand, I got to see everybody real up close, and I got to see the parents, and I got to see the people there, and I realized certain things that day. Is that first off for myself, is I thought for the grace of God that wasn't me, because
Yeah,
that
it could have easily been you.
yeah, I certainly didn't live a saintly life.
Mm,
And I think of some of the mistakes that I have made in life. And so I felt really, I felt bad about that. I
mhm,
wasn't so sure about that. And
mhm.
then the other thing is that it was clear that the people hated that defendant. No doubt.
Yeah,
Everybody in that room, if they could have had a lynching, they would have had a lynching. They hated that defendant.
okay.
And I saw the parents. I saw their broken hearts. I felt them. It was heartbreaking for me. And to feel their child to die, especially under those circumstances, they were awful circumstances. And I felt for them, and I saw their pain, and I saw their anguish over losing their child. And then the fella was convicted and sentenced to 16 years, and he
Dear,
served all 16 years, from what I know.
wow.
And and still after that, the parents, they really laid into the judge afterwards. They called him a coward, and they said all these things about him. And at the time, I thought it was, but they lost their child, and they
Yeah,
were really injured.
yeah,
And so I kind of I understood it, but I always thought about that. I really saw the anger and the hurt in those people, and it changed my life. It really did. And this was on Oprah. I never saw it. It was on Oprah several times, and I was told they actually played my phone call to the police on the show, and
really.
yeah, and and it changed my life in a big way, because that all of a sudden my business didn't matter to me anymore. My kids, all of a sudden my kids were like everything to me. I
Oh,
was
yeah.
always a father, but I focused on business. I really wasn't involved in the kid's life. I relied on the schools. I wasn't like there. And so I decided that was the end of it. That was the end of it. Is that I was going to be a full-time dad. I sold my complete interest in my business to my brother,
Mhm.
and I began to run a tiny little computer business, just me, a consulting business out of my home, and be a full-time dad. And I took my kids to all these lessons, to music lessons, to piano, to athletics, everything. I became and I was so upset because I didn't even know there was a trial going on, because that I was so involved in like big politics. I knew nothing about my hometown, and I lived there all my life. So I was going to be Mr. Hometown. I was going to be Mr. Civic Action. I was going to do everything. I was going to be all the things I almost missed out on. And then seeing those parents, I wasn't going to let that happen to me. I was going to that was not going to happen to me. For the
Wow.
grace of God, that wasn't going to happen to me. And I struggled with these things. My son, he was a special needs kids, and he was on the spectrum. And so I worked with him every day doing hooked on phonics and hooked on math. And it was like such a driving force for me. And that was the way my life was for like 10 years. I did that. I focused on the kids, and all through high school, and I ran for the school board. They elected me to the school board. I managed a $90 million budget. I was elected to the conservation. I go down the list.
You were Mr. Hometown. You accomplished it.
I
You
like.
were like Mr. Dad and Mr. Hometown.
Oh, Tammy. Well, Tammy, it's so true. In some ways, it's easy to be famous in a small town. I live in a small town, and so in some ways, yeah. But I, you're still. Everyone still remembers when you're 6 years old and you pooed in your pants at the church outing or something. You know,
Yeah.
you live in your hometown no matter what happens.
Mhm.
You're still that kid, and that's why I love it. But so it's definitely it was. And I live in my hometown with my kids. So they went to the same school as I did, and they had some of the same teachers as I did.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's so surreal. It was so warm for the heart. I felt like life was really going well. I
Where
really
was it
did.
in New York? Where was it? What small town was it?
It was called Kings Park, and
Kings.
it's on Long Island. It's a shore community, but it's a little different than other communities because all of Long Island in that area is very affluent. But this community, we had a business, an industry in town that closed down, and so my town was always blue collar. So we have very strong blue collar roots. So while everybody else they're like regular suburbia, we're Kings Park and we're family.
Okay, so they were just real people.
Mm. So true, Tammy. And I just loved it, Tamara, because that it was such a, that's why I lived in my hometown. And then everything was going well. Life was good. I was actually starting to, get ahead of the bills and stuff. And so I went out one afternoon out east on Long Island to the Hamptons. That's where all the stars go
Yeah.
to do a little sightseeing. And then you would stop off at something I did regularly at a barbecue place, and I'd have some ribs or something, and then I'd go home. And so I did this the way I would normally do, but on the way home, there was traffic that was backed up for miles. And I waited in traffic for a while, and I fully admit I am, at least at that time, a very aggressive driver. I love my motorcycle. I drove dirt bikes, and just I was a very aggressive driver.
So you said this is nothing. Heck.
Yeah, thank you. That's exactly what I said. No problem. And in fact, I didn't even take it serious. I was like, no problem. I
Yeah.
went off the side of the road. I saw there was a right-hand turn. I went to go to the right-hand turn. Mr. Biker, I'm great. And then a truck came on the opposite direction, made a left-hand turn, and T-boned me square on the motorcycle.
Jeez. And that was 2015. That's the big accident.
Yes, and that was about 10 years after that first experience. And that was about 10 years afterwards, almost 10 years to the day, almost very close. I'm starting to think about that now. That's very interesting.
Yeah. I think time and numbers and sequence, I'm starting to realize mean things. Yeah. So almost to the day. So, wow. So really this whole thing, you were starting to ponder life and the purpose of being here and all these things way before your NDE.
Yes, and it changed my life totally because that experience, and my brother, he was very upset with me for leaving the business. I couldn't do it anymore. It changed me.
So do you still talk to him?
Oh yeah, no,
Okay,
I love my
you're
brother.
good now. Okay, good.
Oh no, my brother. No, we fight like cats and dogs, but he's like the most important person I'm not married to.
Oh,
or is not my daughter.
That is cute. Well, that's what family does, right? They disagree and argue at times, and then they get right back together, and they're the first to defend you. So
yeah, he's always the most critical points in my life. My brother and my sister have always been there. It doesn't matter if we had a drag out argument the night before. If you need help, boom. And that's what family is.
That's true. That's true. Because you never know from one day to the next. And it's funny. The same thing with us. We're there. You just forget it all. Well,
and that's why you should act in that way too. When they call upon you, it's a two-way street. In the same way you rely on them. Be there for them too.
Yes, absolutely. So when you were hit, did you know that you were hit? Did you feel the impact, or did you just pop out?
Lights went out. The lights went out. Yeah. The next thing I remember is that I was laying on the ground and I was looking up, and all of a sudden, like, I realized a whole load of time must have passed because it looked like it was darker out and there were lots of emergency vehicles all around me. And my first instinct was to get up, because that, as you ride dirt bikes, you fall down all the time, every day, several times a day. It's no big deal. You just get up and you walk around. If your leg hurts, you shake it off. Unless there's a bone sticking out, you get back on and you go. And
it's like martial arts.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like if you get up, or you're going to stay down. Get up, right. If you lay down, you're going to stay down. I know it doesn't make sense. It's just a biker thing. It's just the way it is. So I go to get up, and they're like saying no. They started frantically telling me, like, really serious, don't move. And then I got up, and I felt the bones sticking into my muscles in my hip. Ooh. And like my eyes felt like they rolled back in my head. I went falling back, and I looked around, and I realized, wow, this day was going to be like no other day. And my life was going to be changed forever. And that was an understatement.
So you were, when you saw things from the point of view of just with your human eyes, when you saw all these ambulance and all this stuff, but you didn't realize the extent of how bad it was, right?
No, but the next thing that happened was so surreal in a way that that I thought, because the next things I knew, I was flying through the clouds. I was flying through the clouds, and I was seeing the clouds separating, and it seemed so surreal. And then I realized, I'm not sure what I was thinking at the time, but you could imagine what someone would be thinking at that time. And
right.
And then all of a sudden I started coming down again. And then I'm looking down, and I see this round circle on the ground. And I realize I'm in a helicopter. In fact, I'm outside a helicopter in one of these stretchers, and I'm landing at Stony Brook Hospital, one of the most premier trauma centers in the United States. Just by stupid, dumb luck, I just happened to live within a helicopter flight of this university hospital. I graduated from that hospital. My mother graduated from that hospital. My daughter graduated from that hospital.
Isn't that unusual?
Yeah. But for a small town to have such a center, it's great. And they saved my life. They put me back together. I was clearly going to die. There is no way. My injuries were so severe. Is that in the book? The book is on Amazon. It's called The Place Between Here and There.
Yes. And I was just about to say, we need to mention this book. So you're going to get more of this, because not only are you going to cover what's in the book, some of the things in the book, not everything, but we're going to go outside the book into what's going on these days with you and spiritual things you haven't talked about, but you can get the book where it goes more in depth.
Right. And so Tammy, I forgot.
So I want to know how damaged your body was.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yes.
How because I know you got a lot. I understand. How damaged was it? Because I know you said you had bones into your hips, but like how extensive was it?
So what had happened, and the reason why I mentioned the books is we have pictures in the book of the X-rays. But what happened is my spine was broken, and so what they had to do is they had to put these 2 rods in my spine to stabilize it, because if I moved the wrong way, I could be paralyzed.
Oh yeah.
And they put all these long screws to hold these pins in place. And then they had to reconstruct my hip. My hip was all shattered, and they had to put all these pins and screws into different ways because they want to preserve the joint, but everything else around it was shattered. Afterwards, I spoke with the doctor several months later, and he said that if the accident happened several months earlier, the outcome would have been very different. They used many innovative techniques at Stony Brook Hospital, and they saved my hip, they saved my leg. And then And then I had what's called compartmental syndrome in the leg. And my leg was so swollen that it cut off the blood circulation to my foot. And so they had to do what's called an emergency fasciotomy and cut open my leg and let it drain for 2 weeks so the swelling would go down. And so I get to keep my foot. My leg was broken. My arm was broken. My ribs were broken. And my hand was broken. And but most of all is that I had internal bleeding. And that was most life-threatening, and they had to operate several times to stop the bleeding. And I remember one of my school board members. They snuck in the hospital. Very clever person. They could talk their way through anything, and they snuck their way into the hospital.
Yours, huh?
Yeah. Oh no, she's great.
I think you got that same gift.
She's you. She's you. She's you. And she talked her way into, like, I was just out of the thing like a week and a half, 2 weeks. No, excuse me. I was just out of the coma a week, and she snuck in and she like wheeled my cart around, and we come walking down the hallway, and there was a surgeon, and there was this lady next to it, and the surgeon says, "Wait a second," and he pulls the thing, he reads something, he says, "Oh, this is so and so," and the nurse looked at him, looked at me, and dropped her clipboard, and she said, "That's him." like she was convinced that was it. That
you wouldn't even live, and here you
are. No way.
Like a sewn up Raggedy Ann, but here you are.
Ain't that something? And so like to the rest of the world, and it was touch and go. And to the rest of the world, I was in my hospital bed in a coma for 3 weeks, but in myself, in my spirit, I was in another place. That's a place like
weeks. That's the longest I've heard so far.
Yeah, well, it's 3 weeks because it was touch and go, because that I had infections and the fever would come. Then I had the swelling. Then they had to open me up. So it was a series of operation after operation. And wow, those nurses, oh God, angels of love and light. And I saw them even when they didn't know I saw them, because I saw them, and they have no idea. They have no idea the love and light they have in them. They think they're just doing stuff.
This is, I think you're right. There are people that have a special proclivity to be able to help those that are vulnerable. You couldn't help yourself. I mean, you were in not even a weekend state. You were
helpless.
You were helpless. And they are like angels. There are people that are here, and I just, it's wonderful that you did get such good people, and so that's a lot to be blessed for. Just that you had the right people looking out for you, from the doctors to the angel-like nurses.
It's a grace that I've begun to understand, because at first I referred to it as dumb luck, and Kathy would get furious with me when I would say that, and she would say it's a grace. Like when I think of all the things that happened for me to be here and to be all together and stuff, and
you're sitting upright. Look at this. I mean, you're not slouched over. Looking at you, you look so healthy and vibrant. Your skin looks so healthy. You would never know that you went through this trauma. You'd never know.
There's actually a doctor, a researcher at Stony Brook Hospital. I should really, I've mentioned him a couple of times. I should really get his name right. I think his name is called Dr. Palmer. And he's a cardiologist, and he does near-death research. Because he's had many, he's had many patients that report this. And one thing that he said that's very interesting about near-death experiences, that he said that he expects that we should see so many more near-death experiences now because of medicine, because so many times. Yes. But also, one thing that I didn't even think of is that not only can we save people when we couldn't, but when they come back, they have a very high quality of life. In the past, people would be profoundly ill and damaged, but the fact that I was able to come back from my near-death experience, my brain wasn't damaged. Well, not too much. My brain wasn't damaged, and I could relate these stories. And that's really the key, because part of what I believe and what I began to understand, just as passing from spirit into body is is a natural process. It's an automatic process, at least I believe. So is the death process. And not only your body dying, but you returning to spirit. That's a process, and it's not a snapshot. It's a process, and it
I
takes
I
time.
agree with you 100%. It's a process, and one of the examples I give to people, I'm sure everybody has someone that they know or have known that's really old, that lives to be old. If you watch that person, they usually sleep a lot. You ever know anyone like that? They sleep a
Me.
lot. And then, not you, but someone much older, and they sleep a lot. And then they'll wake up and they go, ha ha, I had this dream about, and they'll talk about someone they knew in high school or whatever, or they're actually being visited and being prepared to cross by spirit, because you think children that come in, they're closer to the other side. If you're 90, you're closer to the other side. So it is a process, and I think that even starts before accidents. I think that there's a process. There was a guy friend that I had that died unexpectedly of a heart attack. He was an artist. However, a year before he passed, his art went from very modern and kind of like your picture behind you, very modern, to nature. And the nature was bright colors, kind of like you'd think of people talk about on the other side. So I'm with you. So
But I just want to, Tammy, before you, Tamara, before you go on, I just want to just address that, because that's very important about how you
good.
said that. My sister's a respiratory therapist, and so she's had an opportunity to be with many people at the moment of their passing. It's very important to her that if she's there, no one's going to pass alone, and she's going to hold their hand.
Very good
And
point.
and she would tell me so often, like a few hours or even a day before someone's passes after a long illness, they will kind of like wake up and they'll look normal and they'll interact with everyone, and everyone will think like, wow, they're getting better. Dad looks great. And then they'll pass
Nope.
that night.
Yep. It's soon afterwards.
I believe that is all part of that natural process of
Yeah.
passing into spirit, that I really do believe the body knows when the time is coming. And I
Right.
think that's what happened to me. My body was convinced I was dying and was walking me through returning into spirit. And that's how I wound up in the place between here and there.
Yeah, I want to hear about these 3 weeks, because I was in a coma 3 days. And I've heard, I think Evan Alexander was a week. I've never heard 3 weeks. And I know it was on and off, but you were in such a bad state. Do you, and I know time isn't the same on the other side. So I know that you can't relate whatever, but, uh, and it was funny, people are watching. This is an evolution. It might be you remember whatever now, and later on it keeps coming out, you know? And people don't understand that. It's a weird, don't you agree? It's kind of a strange thing. You could even have more coming out
Every
than
day.
you do right now. Yeah, it's a very odd thing because it's fuller. But tell us what you do recall about those 3 weeks being in that place of not really, and if you want to call it the higher realms or the heaven realms or whatever it is, and the earthly realms. You were someplace in between because you weren't, it wasn't your time. What was that like?
Okay. So you mentioned time, like time
Mhm,
is different there. And that's
mhm,
really important that I explain what I mean by time is different there.
mhm.
Is like,
Please.
yeah, well, like what is time here? Is that days happen, the sun sets and rises, you have appointments in the future. If you leave bread out, it'll get stale and moldy after a while. Things happen. Like
Right.
it, yeah, it's not just a ticking of the clock.
It's
Everything
aging, it's decay.
everything happens.
Mhm,
There, it doesn't happen like that. The
mhm.
way you get a sense of time is that this whole process is about your spiritual growth and preparing you for returning back into spirit. So you're
Yes.
coming to understand spirit again. So you're growing spiritually to make the most of your life and to understand fully, to get the most growth out of it. And so you're going through uh uh this experience, this transition, in order to get to the next state. At least that's what I believe this state is. So well, what happens with time is that as you grow, your spiritual awareness grows. You think about what you had to go through, the thought process to gain to your higher awareness. And you think about that was a long process. Like your path of spiritual growth is a process, and you could look back at that process, and that gives you a sense of time. If you didn't do anything, if you didn't grow, time would not move at all. It would seem like it was frozen. The only way for things to happen is for you to make them happen, and you make them happen by experiencing
Expanding.
it.
Well, experiencing, expanding your soul outward. You know, I feel like I've had like 10 lifetimes in this life. And like you were saying, you lived in the biker world and it was fun. You had a community and so forth. But then you think then you've got the portion of you that's the father, the portion of you that was the business owner with your brother, the portion of you that's a partner, you know, to Kathy, who's also the co-author of your book, who will be on the live show tomorrow with
Yes,
us.
looking
We have
forward.
something special. We'll talk about that at the end. But there's so many facets within us. And I think that if you look at life in this world as we know it, life as an adventure, then it helps you to progress.
The experiences are everything, and that's one of the most important things I learned there. And wow, and that that's a wonderful, wonderful thing, because it really helps you make sense of this world. Because that as I was becoming to terms with things, first off, this whole idea of time and about learning and growing from experiences, one of the first things I noticed when I was in that place is I didn't notice anything different. It really was. Everything was so rooted in my life, my first experiences, and that taught me a lesson in and of itself, because that what I'm going to share with you is how spirit communicated with me, with
Yes.
Stevie Weber, the biker, the computer guy, the dad, the artist, the things, you
And
know.
you personally, because you have a personality here. So you're saying it was very specific to you.
Exactly. So if you grew up in Tanzania and was an astrologist and spoke Tanzanian,
Hmm.
my life would mean nothing to you. And so what I really believe is that what I experienced was directed towards me to help me learn and grow on this path to return to spirit. And I believe that. And so but for you it would be different. But what I believe is the lessons and the understandings that you would receive are the same, are similar, that the process, the things you have to learn are similar, but the way you learn it is according to the way you can learn it. At least that's what I believe.
And it's almost, I mean, it really is like our uh, all of our identity or experiences in this life are custom made to learn what we need to learn here to help our soul grow. So that's why you said we're all different. We're going to learn from different points of view and different paths. So when you were in this place, do you recall exactly what did it look like?
Yeah.
What were you
Oh
told?
yeah. No, yeah. I remember everything. Well,
You're like,
almost.
that was yesterday.
Things, some things, yes, but what happens is part, and I'm going to talk about it later. Part of the process is a life review where
Yes, I
and
was gonna ask you.
but I want to touch on that later, but I want to say it because it's also very important in understanding, and my understanding of this experience is the more I understand about the experience, it also raises my awareness. And then when I review things that have happened, things that I thought were inconsequential, really didn't matter, all of a sudden take on a new meaning because my awareness is raised. So it is really, you mentioned about it's an evolutionary process in the beginning of the show, and that truly is what it is.
We
What
were evolving.
Yeah, one of my favorite YouTubers. His name is David Lee.
Okay.
It's a silly guy. I mean, no, he's a great guy. It's an investing show, but,
Okay.
but but what he does is he opens up and he says, "This is a stream of consciousness." And it's how I see things and how I see the world now. And that may change as events change. And I really think there's such a lesson in that, because you grow and you change and you get wiser and you understand things, but also circumstances change. There are material changes in circumstances. So it's a dynamic world. And that is the very
Yeah.
meaning. What I learned there is the very meaning for life.
Well, and also when you were talking about that, I just, I mean, wow, it just really stuck with me that example you told in the beginning that really, impacted your life about seeing that limo and that whole thing and the court case and all of that, and how that could have been you. But to see how we are interconnected, because here you were interconnected without, you really didn't want to be involved, but somehow yet you were still connected and still had a concern for those people. And I think that when you raise your consciousness, it raises my consciousness. Or you might ask something, just throw it out in the universe. Like right now we're talking, and I'm like, I don't know, think about that. Well, now we're both onto this thinking process in a new way. Now our consciousness is raised. All the people watching this are now asking themselves the same thing. So I think it definitely it's an individual thing, but it's also a collective thing that we are learning, and we're growing individually, and we're doing it together as we raise our awareness together. And it feels like the more I raise my awareness, I feel like, what do I really know? I mean, this is the more I raise it, I'm like, wow, there's so much here.
The only thing I have to do is put an exclamation point after everything you said. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. So when I was there, is that when I said that I didn't notice anything different, is that it was so much rooted in my life. And the first person who I met um, was someone I knew from my past, somebody who was
Huh.
a minor player in my life. Is someone I had a business, business with. Everything. I had hundreds of people like him in my life, but
You're
it
like,
didn't
why
seem.
him?
Excuse me.
You're like, why him?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why
Yeah.
him? But at the time, that's me looking back at it now. But
Sure.
at the time, it was just work. I was like, hey, you didn't talk. You didn't talk. It was like awareness. I'll talk about that later.
Telepathy,
No,
mind to
but it wasn't telepathy like Star Trek and the head goes like this and you hear the words. It wasn't like that. It was
this
like an
new.
awareness.
Okay.
What they were trying to do by introducing me to this person, and when I say they, there was no they, but what they were trying to do is they were trying to teach me how to see spirit. And when I say spirit, I mean that part of you which was created with the universe, was
Mhm.
forever, that grows and develops over time, that through multiple incarnations you
Yeah.
develop and grow spiritually, and
Yeah.
and that and that mm, and that you grow spiritually through many incarnations. And so what they were trying to and that part is your spirit. It's infinite. It's that
Yeah.
continuation of consciousness. like
Yeah.
like like people often have explained to me like reincarnation as like, oh, you're born, you die, you get a new life, you're born. But that wasn't my experience in that place. What my experience was that there was like a continuation of consciousness, that part of
Right.
you was always in spirit, and just part of you comes down to have a human experience in
Okay.
ignorance with your past experience as your intuition to help guide you to learn and continue to evolve. And so at least that's what I learned there. So this first step was that they were teaching me to
Yes.
see spirit. So when I saw my old colleague, he hadn't aged in 20 years, but it didn't occur to me as anything odd. And so I said, hey, I didn't say, but
Yeah.
everything,
Right.
so, hey, what's up? Nothing is. And then our paths crossed again, and he aged like 50 years, and he looked like a really old person. And
Mhm.
and I talked to him for a little bit, and then I saw like a glint in his eye. I saw a certain mannerism. He used a certain word. I was like, you're my, and I recognize him for who he is. It was like he would acknowledge that. And that went on for some time. Is he kept on approaching me as different sizes, not only as himself, but he started to change himself as being a tall person, a short person. He appeared to me as a lady. He appeared to me all different shapes and
That
sizes.
is cool. So they're
And
teaching you to recognize the spirit in people. When you see them, there's a glimmer. What is it? The eyes are through the what is it? The eyes that went through the soul, that they were trying to get you to recognize. That is freaking cool. But
so,
don't
so go ahead.
that I love that. Go ahead.
So, but but what happened is, and Tamara, you hit it right, because at first I relied very heavily on small mannerisms and small things I knew about this person to make the connection. But then after a while, there was something else that I began to notice that was a little bit different. And it was kind of like it was something that was just very special about him. It started as a little flicker at first. And then as he kept on changing, I relied less on looking at the appearance. I relied more on feeling that energy, that flicker. And the more I focused on that flicker, the brighter it got. I don't think it got brighter, but my ability to be aware of it got brighter. And it actually got to the point that if he was anywhere near me, I knew he was here, because it had nothing to do with seeing him. It had to do with this energy that connected everything. When I said, when I was there were no pretty skies of rainbows, and all of those things are beautiful. But this experience was very different, because what I felt there, truly what I felt, is once I felt that energy, I felt that energy all around me. I felt it, and it was a comforting energy. It was almost like a hug or a blanket,
Yeah.
but it was alive, and it was me, but it wasn't me.
You were
And
part of
then,
something bigger, maybe?
yes, but then I started to feel the energy in everybody, in everything,
Mhm.
plant, animal, everything, the universe. There was something very same about all the energy, but there was something very unique about each individual source of energy, everything. And what I began to realize is that we are all connected. We are all part of the energy, just
Yeah.
like cells in a body, that each cell has its own life. It lives, it dies, it wants to survive. But
Yes.
all of those cells make up you and your consciousness. Not one of those cells know of you. I don't think they do, but all of them make up your consciousness. And now what I was beginning to understand, that all of our spirits together make up one consciousness. And
Uh-huh.
what I believe, what I felt, is that one consciousness is that of the creator, is that the creator and the creation are one. We are not two. It is not a creation like God's everywhere. He's voyeuring on everything. No, we are God. The earth, that we are all part of the creation. We
Right.
were
It's creation.
we were all created like from a singularity, the Big Bang, or let there be light. Science and spirit explain the very same thing, that we're born from the singularity and spread out into the universe. And the universe expands and grows, and molecules are developed and compressed, and new galaxies are formed. Relationships are had. People are born. Things are understood. And science and spirit say the same thing. And after all the energy is expelled in the universe, everything is going to, and nothing but inert matter left. Everything collapses on itself, returns back to the singularity with all of the experiences that we've learned. And really, what I believe is that all of our experiences add to the Akashic record. And I
I was
believe that.
just about to say that out of my mouth. I swear to you. I was just about to say this is all of our Akashic records. And there's some people that have had, near death experiences, they can see all of them. Some people come back and actually can see their past life. But I love how you explained it. It's not, a stop and a start and a singularity. It's a continuous motion. But think about it. If we are, you could say God's creation, but let's just, well, okay, I don't want to go too deep, but if we are, let's just say God's creation, and then we are creation, then we are creation. We're all of creation, and we're part of creation, and creation has to keep creating. What does that mean? That means we don't die. We have to keep creating. We can't help it. We got to
Mm.
be another form. But I love how you say they, but you could say they. I say team God. Just put it a little salt and pepper. Just put it all in there, whatever your team is. But it's showing you, or your higher self, or it doesn't really matter. Showing
Higher
you,
self, higher self.
yeah, showing you, about this experiment and how to feel the energy with people. That's something people can do now on Earth, is feel the energy. I went and got a facial the other day, and the woman looked at me. She's, the first time I wasn't so sure. People tell me the strangest things, but they're very normal to me. She looked at me. She goes, "I know you. Have I seen you on TV?" I went, "Eh." And she's like, "Have you?" "I know you." And I said, "You like the 1800s?" "Oh, it's my favorite time." And I
Oh,
said, "Funny, it was mine too when I knew you back then."
I feel you there. I feel it. Your energy. No, you broadcast it. It says nothing of my perception skills. You broadcast it.
Oh, really? So I'm like a little beacon, and so she,
You are not a little one, a beautiful beacon of love and light and
oh,
culture from a past time.
oh, God bless you. Well, I love people so much, and it gets me super excited when I see people that start experiencing them themselves and realizing, wow, I'm a lot bigger than this. And they start waking up. And I said, get excited. It's an adventure. There's nothing to be fearful of here. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, but I do believe that only a portion of us are here. So when we die, it's just a portion of us. I think another part is in the spiritual realms, honestly, and other planets probably. We're pretty big. So
That's what I felt, Tamara. No, really, that's exactly what I felt. But I also want to make it clear is that what I'm relaying is my experience, and that I'm not a religious person in the sense I never was, but everything is about my experience, and so I
mhm,
relay my experience as I experienced it. And I can't change it, or I gotta say it in the way that I experienced it, because that later on is that I discover things like that. So I try to, I have to explain it. So it's when I talk about the creator and the creation being one, I'm not preaching to anybody, but that's my experience, what I
mhm.
felt there.
You
And
have to
so
own it. Mhm.
since you're talking to me about my experience, that's my experience.
Yeah, you have to own it, and it doesn't matter if people believe you or don't believe you.
That's okay.
It's what is true to you, and and I think we should all honor that. But I get what you're saying, and to me, it's very validating because I've always felt these things, and to hear you really validate what I felt to be true, it just touches my heart. It really does. So, wow, you're getting so many people to wake up to really like shake them up here.
It's just it's a surreal experience. But so many times I look back at everything that's happened, and I'm like, wow. I just wow. And I'm a biker and a beer drinking Harley guy. Like, why does this happen to me? Like me, like out of everyone you could pick, like I am the worst. I'm the worst. Why me? I am so irreverent and so I they're out of the mind. No problem finding a hypocrite here. You will not have to search far, I assure you.
But I say the same thing. I'm like, you could have picked some really cute, really nice,
Well,
obedient
you
Mormon.
are cute and you are nice.
I am a pain in the butt though, and I am nice. I am very nice, but I ask a lot of questions.
Right.
I'm a pain in the butt. I was one of those kids. What? And I used to party a lot, and I'm like, really? Couldn't you pick someone that was like none, or And but you're a real person, and people
Well,
identify with that.
sometimes it's an old story. Sometimes the Lord chooses the most unlikely of servants, and often the Lord chooses wisely.
Yes, oh, amen there.
Well,
Well,
I just want to digress for one quick moment because I have to tell the story. I have to tell this one story. Is
I
that
love it. Go ahead.
is that I I was visiting my mom in Florida way before any of this stuff happened. And she lives in a place called the Villages. And so I'd come here and I'd visit her, and they had like dollar beers at the brewery. So I'd drink dollar beers all
Yeah, that's a good
weekend. And
deal.
yeah. And my mom was like the Energizer bunny. She'd drag me all over to all these things and we'd have a great
Not
time.
surprised. I'm looking at you. I'm not
But
surprised. It had to come somewhere.
but but by the time it's time to get on the plane and go home after a week of this, I'm so dehydrated and so sick. I just want to go home. I just want to sleep on the plane, And Florida, the plane's always delayed because of the weather. And so I go to get on this plane. It was delayed several times. If it's not getting out now, it's not landing in New York because they have a deadline. It has to land by a certain time. So we get on the plane. I know this is the last. I got to get this. It's packed. Everyone's cranky. And so I go to sit down in my assigned seat. There's a lady sitting next to me. And she's this older lady, By all appearances, she's praying in Spanish, she's clutching a rosary, and she's shaking.
Oh, well, okay.
And it wasn't that I wasn't a compassionate person at the time, but I was just so sick. I didn't want to deal with this. I looked around, I tried to find another seat, and I
That's terrible.
so I
Oh,
sit down next to this lady, and they go to shut the cargo door. It makes a noise. She yelped, and then she started crying. And I thought, like, any second they were going to have to bring him. The plane was going to be delayed, and we weren't going to take off. And so I didn't know what else to do. And so just instinctively, I reached over and I held the lady's hand. And the lady looked at me, and
stop.
she was like, she was trying to figure out what was going on here. And I wasn't sure she was figuring it out in a way that I thought I wanted to. And I knew I had to say something to her. And I was holding this lady's hand and she was looking at me, and I'm a stranger. I had to say something. And I didn't know what to say. And it just came to me all of a sudden. I said, Jesus sent me. I thought a bolt of lightning would come down and kill me right then. You know, if that lady wasn't on the plane, I was sure the plane would crash. But that seemed to calm her down. And she started to really calm down a little bit. And so I was feeling a little better about the Jesus thing. And then all of a sudden the plane starts rolling. And then she goes into a meltdown. And
Oh
so
boy.
yeah, no, Tamara, I thought this was it. And I didn't know what else to say. I was holding this lady's hand. I own this. There's no way I own this. I don't know what to say. So I just leaned over to her and I said, do you have any grandchildren?
Very good.
Oh my God, the walls of Jericho came tumbling down. Because in perfect English, this lady tells me all about her grandchildren. She tells me all about Maria and Georgie. They're getting married in New York. Georgie's real name is Jorge. She doesn't know why she uses George instead of Jorge, her real name. But her married name is Bernstein now. So who is she to talk? And she went on. Maria makes more money than Georgie, but Georgie, they're getting married. She knows things that she went on for 2.5 hours without coming up for air once. She told me how she came to the country on basically a raft from Cuba, like back in the 70s.
Whoa.
And she told me so many things, Tamara, about her life, and so many of those things you could have been soured about. You really could have been. But she had such a glow about her and such a warmth and excitement about her. And the way that she told about her family and everything bad that happened to her, somehow it made good in her life. And I grew a real deep love and respect for her. And I felt really bad about the Jesus thing. Especially she was a religious person. At best, I was an agnostic at the time.
Okay.
And so the plane lands, and of course she can't reach the overhead things. I got to get it down, and I carry it out.
Of course you do. Now you're bonded.
Yeah, and she probably does this all the time. Get people to do things for her. I mean, that nice sweet old lady. And so we go to walk off the plane, and all the people are at the end of the tarmac. And I see Maria and Georgie; they're all waving, and so I take her aside. I say, "I got to say goodbye now. I don't want to interrupt." And she said, "No." I said, "No, not just." I want to go. I'm tired. And I said, but I have to tell you something. I lied. And she put down her bags and she looked at me. And she says, what's wrong, Stephen? And I said,
No, you're a first name basis.
Yeah. And she calls me Stephen.
Yeah, the full proper name.
And she says, and so I said the Jesus thing. I said, Jesus didn't send me. I said, I just wanted you to shut up. You're making a lot of noise. I had a headache. I just wanted you to be quiet. And she paused for a second. And all of a sudden, she let out this big old belly laugh that like echoed throughout the whole hall. And she reached up and she grabbed me by my ears and pulled me down and kissed my forehead and looked at me square in the eyes, like 2 inches above. And she said, the only one you misled was yourself. I said, no. I said, no, I lied. She says, no, the only one you misled was yourself, Because Jesus did send you. And sometimes Jesus sends the most unlikely of servants. And once again, Jesus chose wisely.
Oh, I love that story. And it also showed, you got off of your attitude. You didn't feel good. And you're like, this woman's freaking out. And in the end, you were compassionate. And wow, she ended up kind of teaching you at the end there, right?
Well, so many times exchanges are an equal exchange of energy. I think almost everything, because everything, the universe seeks balance in every encounter. And
Oh,
so many times I thought I was above her. And really, no, no. I learned so much, and I bet you she learned a lot from me too. And it just goes to show you, you just
yes.
never know. Because, but that's why that story was so important to me in understanding what had happened to me in this experience. Because I always thought, why me? Why me? But sometimes you just get chosen for these things. I just don't know. Someday when I get the answer, I'll let you know. But until then,
Well, and
that end. That and
I
why Kathy likes me are going to be
Well, I think we were talking about early being the entertainment in a relationship. I haven't met Kathy yet, but I'm pretty sure that might be you. You're very you have your stories are really a lot of fun and full of wisdom. But I think what more importantly, what you were saying is that these things that seem random are not random. They're part of our journey, and then we're learning from these incidents. And just quickly, it was funny. I was on a just quick. I was on a plane once and they had this young fella. He might have been 21. Okay. Just got out of college. And he did the same thing on me. He was sweating bullets. You could literally see it dripping down. He was sitting beside me. He was like, he started hyperventilating. I'm like, oh my God. And I thought it was going to be a reenactment of the William Shatner where he freaks out in the plane. No, I'm serious. It was like bad to the point that people were noticing around. I was like, I got to control this thing. And I said, so, what's your name? And I said, what's going on? I'm going to the job interview. And I tried to get him that wouldn't do it. And then he says, I'm freaking out. And then he started trying to throw up in the barf bag. It got really bad. So, I mean, this was crazy. And I went, oh my God, he literally is having a full meltdown. And so, and I went into like grandmama mode or something like that. And I said, and I did the same thing. I grabbed his hand. I said, why don't we just talk for a minute? I can't talk. I said, look at my face. Look at my face. And I said, you're going to be okay. And I said, first of all, and I did my medium thing. I said, your granddaddy's here. He's blah, 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 blah. How do you know that? I said, doesn't really matter, but today's not your day to die. You're going to be just fine. You're going to go to that job interview. And told him, he goes, like, really? And it took a long time, but I tried to be a real person because he literally was going to create a big scene on the plane. And I was worried for him. I thought he was going to have a heart attack. So it's just being a person at that moment in time. So why don't we do part 2 and say goodbye, and we'll come back and do part 2. And then you can hear about not only the life review, a little bit of that, but also further developments of your son's passing. God bless you. And the things that you've learned and where you are now, because you are more than just that near-death experience. You are a spiritual being having a spiritual journey and sharing this and owning this.
That's right.
It's so much more. So stay tuned for part 2.
Spiritual being having a human experience.
Absolutely. So we'll see you for part 2, and then the live chat tomorrow, or we're going to be having your partner, and that would be Katherine Plant, who helped co-write this book. So
Looking
we'll talk
forward to
about
it.
that. All right. See you part 2.